In the quiet valleys where the wind howled like a beast denied its prey, and the snow piled high enough to swallow entire homesteads whole, there lived a woman named Eliza, who refused to bow to the cruel whims of winter or the dismissive scoffing of men who claimed they knew better about the earth and its secrets. She buried her cellar deeper than any man dared, and it fed her family through winter, not by chance or luck, but through sheer unyielding determination that turned doubt into defiance and scarcity into abundance. Picture the scene in the late 1800s when the frontier demanded everything from those who dared to tame it. Eliza, a widow with 3 young children and a small plot of rocky soil, watched as the first frost bit into the ground, and the men of the settlement laughed at her plans. They said no woman could dig that deep without the walls caving in or the groundwater flooding the pit. They boasted of their own shallow cellars barely 6 feet down, where potatoes rotted and apples turned to mush before the solstice. Yet Eliza gripped her shovel with calloused hands that had already plowed fields, birthed calves, and mended fences through blizzards. She studied the land the way others studied scripture, noting how the soil changed color and texture as she went deeper, how the temperature held steady below the frost line, where the earth itself became a natural refrigerator, preserving life against the freeze. Her vision was clear. She would create a sanctuary beneath the surface, a chamber carved from the bedrock that would shield their harvest from the harshest elements. The men shook their heads and offered half-hearted help that faded by midday, but Eliza persisted day after day, hauling dirt in buckets by lantern light, her back aching, her arms trembling. Yet, her spirit unbroken, she reinforced the walls with timbers dragged from the nearby woods, layering them with stones gathered from the creek bed, each one chosen for its strength and fit. She dug past the point where most would have stopped at 8 feet, 10 feet, 12 feet, venturing into depths where the air grew cool and dampened. The world above seemed a distant memory. The risk was real. Cave-ins could bury her alive, or the cold could seep in unexpectedly. But she calculated every inch, understanding that deeper meant more stable temperatures closer to the constant 50 degrees that nature provides in the bowels of the planet. This was no reckless endeavor. It was science born of necessity and observation passed down from elders who remembered the great famines when shallow stores failed and families starved. She lined the floor with gravel for drainage and built shelves from salvaged lumber, arranging them to hold bushels of potatoes, carrots, turnips, beets, and cabbages, all harvested at their peak, and packed in layers of sand and straw to draw out moisture. While locking in freshness, she added crocks of fermented sauerkraut and pickled beans, jars of preserved berries, and dried meats hung from hooks in the ceiling where the cool air circulated naturally through vents she had cleverly engineered, using hollow logs to draw in fresh breezes without letting in the killing frost. As the snow began to fall in earnest, the settlement braced for a winter that would test every soul. The blizzards came earlier and fiercer than anyone recalled, drifts blocking roads and isolating cabins. One by one, the shallow cellars of her neighbors emptied their contents, spoiling or freezing solid, while hunger gnawed at the edges of their resolve. Yet in Eliza's home, the deep cellar became a lifeline. Each evening she descended the sturdy ladder with a lantern in hand, emerging with armfuls of vibrant roots and crisp greens that sustained her children through the longest nights. They gathered around the hearth, sharing meals that tasted of summer defiance. The men who had doubted her now came knocking, humbled by their own empty larders, begging for a share of her bounty, and she gave generously, knowing that survival was not a solitary victory, but a lesson in community. She explained to them in quiet tones how depth mattered, because it tapped into the earth's thermal mass, where heat from the core radiates upward in winter and coolness holds firm, preventing the wild. Swings at ruined surface stores. She spoke of humidity control, how the gravel and vents balanced moisture to stop mold without drying out the produce. She detailed the importance of timing the harvest before full ripeness to avoid bruising, and how proper curing in the field strengthened the skins against decay. Her words carried the weight of experience, not book learning, but hands-on wisdom forged in the soil itself. Through that winter, her family thrived, not just surviving, but maintaining strength and health, while others weakened from monotonous diets of salted pork and hardtack. The children grew rosy, cheeked and energetic, reciting lessons by the fire, fueled by the nutrients locked away in her subterranean vault. As spring thawed the land, the story spread like wildfire. Across the valleys, travelers stopped to marvel at the entrance to her cellar. A simple trapdoor disguised under a rug in the cabin floor, leading to a cavern of abundance deeper than any man had dared to venture. They marveled at how one woman had challenged the conventions that kept females confined to kitchens and gardens, while men claimed dominion over heavy labor and engineering. Yet Eleazar had proven that ingenuity knows no gender, that the earth yields to those who respect its rhythms and persist beyond the first signs of resistance. Her cellar stood as a monument to resilience, a testament that preparation and foresight could conquer even the most unforgiving say-so. Ends the explanation runs deeper still, for in her actions lay profound truths about human endurance and the power of challenging assumptions. Society had long dictated roles that confined women to lesser tasks, but Eliza's shovel and her unshakable will shattered those chains, showing that true strength emerges when necessity meets creativity. She understood the physics intuitively. The deeper the burial, the more insulated from surface extremes. The ground acts as a buffer, absorbing daytime heat and nighttime cold to create a stable microclimate ideal for long-term storage. This principle, drawn from ancient practices in Europe and early native wisdom, allowed her to extend the life of perishables far beyond what shallow pits could achieve. She layered knowledge with practicality, selecting varieties of crops known for their keeping qualities, like russet potatoes that store for months and hardy cabbages that withstand weeks of chill. Without wilting, her methods prevented waste, turning potential hunger into security. And in doing so, she fed not only her own but inspired neighbors to rethink their own preparations, building similar structures that strengthened the entire community. Through the following years, her story became legend, told around campfires and in letters sent east to relatives, urging them to dig deep and plan ahead. It embodied the pioneer spirit, where innovation arose from desperation and where a single act of bravery rippled outward to change lives. The lessons echo through time, reminding us that adversity reveals hidden capacities within ordinary people, that gender barriers crumble under the pressure of survival, and that the earth itself holds secrets for those patient enough to uncover them. Eliza never sought fame or recognition. She simply wanted her children to wake each morning with full bellies and hopeful hearts. Yet her legacy endures as a beacon for anyone facing their own winters, whether literal blizzards of snow or metaphorical storms of hardship. The deep cellar symbolizes going beyond the expected, pushing past limits others impose, and emerging with sustenance for body and soul. It teaches preparation as an act of love and defiance, storing not just food, but hope for the future. When the ground freezes and the winds roar, one must dig deeper, literally and figuratively, to find the resources that will carry us through. Expanding on this narrative reveals layers upon layers of insight into the human condition. Consider how Eliza's daily toil mirrored the broader struggles of women throughout history, who quietly engineered solutions while men debated theories in town halls. She calculated the angle of her excavation to prevent collapse, using principles of soil mechanics that modern engineers would later formalize, studying how loose dirt compacts differently at varying depths and shoring up weak points With cross braces that distributed weight evenly, her attention to detail prevented disasters that could have claimed her life, and in explaining her success to curious visitors, she broke down the process step by step from site selection, away from tree roots that might invade the space, to choosing a southern exposure for the entrance to maximize solar gain in shoulder seasons. Without overheating the core, she elaborated on ventilation systems, explaining how warm air rises and cool air sinks, creating natural convection that kept the air fresh and reduced the risk of carbon dioxide buildup or spoilage from stagnant conditions. Her crocks of fermented foods added another dimension of preservation, leveraging beneficial bacteria to transform cabbage into sauerkraut, rich in vitamins that prevented scurvy during months. Without fresh greens, this technique, borrowed from old-world traditions, amplified her stores, turning simple vegetables into superfood. As that bolstered immunity and flavor alike as weeks turned to months, the family adapted routines around the cellar visits, timing descents to minimize heat loss from the main house and using the stable temperature to even chill milk and butter in a side alcove she had carved for dairy storage. The children learned responsibility, helping to inspect for pests or wilting and understanding the interconnectedness of their efforts with nature's cycles. This education in self-reliance fostered independence and gratitude far beyond what books could impart through the darkest days. When blizzards raged for weeks, sealing them indoors, Eliza's stories around the hearth wove explanations of her methods with moral tales of perseverance, drawing parallels to biblical figures who endured trials or indigenous peoples who had thrived in harmony with the land for centuries. She emphasized that knowledge compounds when shared, and that isolation breeds failure, while collaboration builds fortresses of support. The men who once mocked her returned not as supplicants but as students asking for blueprints and advice, which she provided freely, sketching diagrams in the dirt with a stick, detailing measurements and materials so they could replicate the success on their own homesteads. This act of generosity transformed the community, forging bonds that outlasted the winter and created a network of mutual aid for future seasons. Her cellar became more than storage. It evolved into a symbol of empowerment, proving that one person's vision executed with precision and heart can alter the course of collective destiny. As the snow melted and green shoots pierced the soil, the settlement celebrated with a feast drawn entirely from her reserves. Tables groaned under platters of roasted roots, stews of preserved meats and pies from dried fruits, all testimony to the bounty that depth and diligence had preserved. The air-fi led with laughter and toasts to Eliza, who sat quietly among them, her hands still bearing the scars of her labor, yet her eyes shining with quiet pride. The explanation of her triumph extends into philosophical realms, touching on the nature of courage, which is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let it dictate actions. She had feared the depths, the darkness, the unknown, but channeled that fear into careful planning and incremental progress, digging a little farther each day, testing the walls and adjusting as needed. This incrementalism mirrors how great achievements are built not in leaps, but in persistent steps forward. It challenges the notion that physical strength alone determines capability, for while the men possessed greater brute force, Eliza wielded intelligence and endurance that proved superior in the long run. Her story dismantles stereotypes by illustrating how lived experience often trumps theoretical knowledge. She had no formal schooling in engineering, yet her intuitive grasp of thermodynamics and biology surpassed that of self-proclaimed experts who relied on shallow methods that failed under pressure. In broader terms, it speaks to societal progress where marginalized voices bring fresh perspectives that drive innovation. History is replete with such figures, unsung innovators whose practical solutions reshape norms, and in Eliza's case, the deep cellar represented a quiet revolution against the status quo, reminding us that true advancement often springs from the ground up, from those closest to the challenges they face. Expanding further, the narrative invites reflection on sustainability and environmental harmony by digging deep rather than sprawling wide. Eliza minimized her footprint, preserving surface land for crops and livestock while utilizing the subsurface efficiently. This approach aligns with modern principles of regenerative agriculture and passive solar. Our design, where natural systems are harnessed to reduce reliance on external energy or resources. Her vents and drainage systems required no pumps or electricity, relying instead on gravity and convection, timeless forces that operate without cost or maintenance. In an era of increasing climate volatility, such methods offer blueprints for resilience against erratic weather patterns, droughts, floods, and extremes that threaten food security. Her emphasis on variety and storage, from root vegetables to fermented goods to dried herbs, created a balanced diet that supported health holistically, preventing the nutritional deficiencies that plagued many settlements. The science behind it involves understanding enzymatic reactions that slow in cooler temperatures, halting spoilage, while beneficial microbes in ferments enhance bioavailability of nutrients, making food not only last longer but nourish more effectively. This holistic view integrated body, mind, and environment into a cohesive system where each element supported the others. Through the winter months, the psychological benefits emerged as well. The assurance of a full larder lifted spirits, fostered hope, and reduced anxiety, allowing the family to focus on education, storytelling, and planning for the future, rather than mere survival. The deep cellar thus fed their souls as much as their bodies, instilling a sense of security that rippled into greater creativity and community engagement. Neighbors who benefited from her sharing began experimenting with their own innovations, leading to collective improvements like shared seed banks and cooperative harvesting that buffered the entire valley against future hardships. Eliza's legacy continued long after her passing as her children, grown and thriving, passed down the past techniques to their offspring and neighbors, incorporating modern adaptations like insulated doors or deeper reinforcements, while honoring the core principles of depth, stability, and respect for the earth. The tale serves as an enduring parable that, in the face of overwhelming odds, one must dare to go deeper to unearth the resources hidden beneath the surface. It encourages us all to examine our own cellars, metaphorical or literal, questioning whether we have settled for shallow solutions that falter under pressure, or committed to the hard work of excavation that yields lasting bounty. The explanation weaves through economics as well, for in an age without supermarkets or global supply chains, self-sufficiency determined prosperity. Eliza's approach conserved resources, reduced spoilage, and maximized yield from limited land, turning potential loss into abundance and demonstrating that preparedness is the ultimate form of wealth building. Her methods lowered dependency on trade or aid, fostering independence that strengthened family units and local economies in times of regional shortages. Her surplus allowed bartering for tools or livestock, enhancing overall community wealth. This economic resilience highlights how individual actions scale to societal benefits, especially in rural or frontier contexts where isolation amplifies the need for robust local systems. Her story also touches on gender dynamics, revealing how patriarchal structures often undervalue female contributions until crisis exposes their necessity. The men who initially dismissed her learned humility and collaboration, realizing that innovation arises from diverse experiences and that dismissing half the population's potential wastes collective genius. This shift in perspective accelerated progress in the settlement as women gained voices in planning and decision-making, leading to more equitable and effective strategies for survival and growth. Culturally, the deep cellar became a motif in local folklore songs and tales celebrating Eliza as a folk hero. We Hoe shovels symbolized the power of the overlooked to reshape reality. Children learned her name alongside pioneers and inventors, understanding that everyday heroism often hides in domestic spaces and that true daring can be quiet, methodical, and profoundly effective. As decades passed, historians and homesteaders revisited her methods, documenting them in journals and guides that influenced generations of back to the land movements, emphasizing low-tech, high-wisdom approaches that prioritize harmony with nature over domination. The principles she embodied persist today in permaculture designs, root cellar revivals, and survivalist literature where depth and insulation remain foundational for food security. In uncertain times, the narrative of her winter sustenance inspires countless individuals facing personal winters of illness, financial strain, or emotional turmoil to dig deeper into their inner resources to fortify their foundations and to emerge with renewed capacity to nourish themselves and others. It underscores the universality of the lesson that preparation rooted in observation, persistence, and respect for natural laws conquers even the most formidable challenges. Ultimately, Eliza's buried cellar stands as an eternal reminder that the greatest treasures often lie beneath the obvious surface, waiting for those bold enough to reach them. And in reaching, she not only fed her family, but illuminated a path for all who follow to thrive through the darkest seasons by embracing the depth of their own potential and the earth's generous embrace. The story unfolds further into the intricate details of daily life within the homestead, where the rhythm of seasons dictated every action, yet Eliza's foresight created pockets of abundance that defied the barren landscape outside her windows. Each morning, as the family rose to the sound of wind rattling the shutters, she would descend into the sea. Embrace of the cellar, selecting items with care, ensuring nothing went to waste, and teaching her children the value of stewardship. Through example, the carrots pulled from their sandy beds retained their sweetness and crunch long after surface stores had withered. The potatoes remained firm and sprout-free, thanks to the consistent humidity that prevented desiccation, while the fermented goods developed complex flavors that elevated simple meals into feasts of satisfaction. This meticulous management required ongoing attention, and Eliza explained its importance by drawing analogies to life itself, how neglect leads to decay but attentive care preserves, enhances value. Her explanations extended to the biological processes at play, describing how beneficial molds and yeasts in the air of the deep chamber contributed to natural preservation without the need for modern chemicals or additives. She observed these phenomena through trial and error, noting patterns in temperature fluctuations and adjusting vents accordingly to maintain optimal conditions. This empirical knowledge, accumulated over months, formed a comprehensive manual of survival that she later compiled in a handwritten ledger, passed down as a family heirloom. The ledger detailed everything from construction techniques using locally sourced materials to troubleshooting common issues like condensation buildup or rodent intrusion solutions, drawn from ingenuity such as using peppermint plants as natural deterrents or layering ashes for added insulation. The winter tested not only physical endurance but emotional fortitude as isolation bred cabin fever, yet the cellar provided more than food. It offered purpose and connection through the shared task of maintenance. The family bonded over these duties, turning chores into rituals that reinforced their unity and resilience. Stories of past hardships shared in the dim light of tea. He lantern fostered a sense of continuity with ancestors who had faced similar trials, instilling pride in their heritage and confidence in their abilities. As the season waned and the first signs of thaw appeared in trickles of meltwater from the eaves, Eliza reflected on the journey with quiet satisfaction. Her deeper dig had not only ensured survival but had transformed their existence from one of mere endurance to one of flourishing there. Surplus allowed for planting a larger garden in spring, expanding their self-sufficiency. and creating a cycle of abundance that would compound over years. The men of the settlement now sought her counsel regularly, incorporating her insights into their own preparations and crediting her publicly for averting widespread hardship. This acknowledgement validated her efforts and encouraged other women to pursue similar innovations, breaking down barriers and enriching the collective knowledge base. The explanation of her success encompasses psychological aspects, as well demonstrating how a clear vision sustained through adversity builds mental toughness. Eliza maintained focus by visualizing the end goal of her children's laughter and full plates, which motivated her through moments of exhaustion or doubt. This mindset of purposeful action proved more powerful than physical strength, alone highlighting the interplay between intention and execution in achieving remarkable outcomes. Her approach also promoted ecological balance by avoiding overharvesting or wasteful practices, instead working in tandem with the land's natural cycles to ensure long-term viability. Crops were rotated and soil amended with compost from kitchen scraps, returning nutrients to the earth and sustaining fertility for future seasons. This closed-loop system exemplified sustainable living principles that resonate across eras, offering lessons for contemporary challenges like food insecurity and environmental degradation. In essence, Eliza's buried cellar represents the triumph of human ingenuity over circumstance, a profound illustration that when faced with limits, one must innovate beyond them, embracing depth in effort, understanding, and connection to uncover the sustenance that lies waiting. The tale continues to inspire as a living testament to the power of one woman's resolve to feed her family through winter and, in doing so, to nourish the seeds of hope, resilience, and wisdom for all who hear it and choose to dig deeper in their own lives. The principles she championed echo in modern homesteading communities, where enthusiasts replicate her methods, adapting them with contemporary tools while preserving the core ethos of self-reliance and respect for nature. Workshops and online forums discuss the merits of deep cellars, citing Eliza's story as foundational, sharing blueprints and success metrics that validate the timeless efficacy of her design. Variations include larger community cellars or integrated basement designs, but the fundamental idea remains unchanged, going deeper to achieve stability and abundance. Her influence extends into educational curricula, where teachers use the narrative to illustrate themes of gender equality, scientific inquiry, and historical adaptation, encouraging students to question assumptions and experiment with practical solutions that address real-world problems. The explanation delves into the social transformations sparked by her example as women in the settlement gained confidence from her precedent. They organized collective efforts for food preservation and storage, creating networks that enhanced security and fostered empowerment. This ripple effect strengthened families and communities, demonstrating how individual courage catalyzes broader change. The winter that could have brought devastation instead became a catalyst for progress and unity, proving that adversity, when met with creativity, yields unexpected gifts of growth and solidarity. Through the years, Eliza's cellars endured as a functional structure, maintained and expanded by successive generations, each edition honoring the original vision while incorporating new insights from evolving knowledge. The site became a local landmark visited by those seeking inspiration or practical guidance, its walls whispering tales of perseverance to all who entered the cool depths and felt the steady embrace of the earth. The story of how she buried her cellar deeper than any man dared and fed her family through winter thus transcends a simple survival anecdote, becoming a multifaceted parable of human potential that continues to resonate, encouraging us to excavate our own depths of capability, resourcefulness, and compassion in the face of whatever winter's life may bring. The detailed recounting of her daily routines reveals the meticulous nature of her success, rising before dawn to check on the animals and then descending into the cellar to assess conditions, She would note the level of Hav, moisture on the walls, adjusting vents or adding absorbent materials like charcoal to maintain equilibrium. She explained these adjustments as akin to tuning an instrument, where harmony ensures longevity. Each produce item received individual attention, with damaged specimens removed promptly to prevent spread of decay and healthy ones rotated for even air circulation. Her children assisted in these tasks, learning the language of the cellar, its smells, textures, and subtle changes that signaled health or impending issues. This hands-on education cultivated keen observation skills that served them well in all aspects of life, from farming to problem-solving. As the family consumed the stores, they tracked usage against projections, adjusting rations during particularly harsh stretches to assess stretch supplies without sacrificing nutrition. Eliza's explanations during these times emphasized balance and foresight, warning against complacency and encouraging proactive measures. The community gatherings that followed the tab. Winter featured her as a central figure, recounting not for glory, but to impart knowledge, sharing how the deeper excavation had interacted with local geology, the rocky subsoil providing natural reinforcement and the absence of heavy clay reducing flood risks. She broke down the construction phases in detail, from initial site survey using a simple plumb line to test stability to the final ceiling with a heavy door insulated with layers of wool and wood to minimize thermal bridging. These technical details empowered listeners to attempt similar projects, fostering a culture of innovation rooted in practicality. Her humility shone through as she credited the land itself and the accumulated wisdom of those who came before, rather than claiming sole invention. This attitude of gratitude and collaboration further endeared her to the settlement, strengthening social ties and ensuring the knowledge spread widely and effectively. In retrospect, the winter served as a crucible, forging not only survival but a deeper appreciation for the interconnectedness of all things. The deep cellar symbolized this web linking human effort to natural forces in a partnership that yielded life-sustaining results. The explanation encompasses ethical dimensions as well, highlighting stewardship over exploitation and generosity over hoarding, values that sustained the community long after the snows melted. Eliza's willingness to share her bounty modeled integrity and compassion, demonstrating that true security comes from collective well-being rather than isolated abundance. This philosophy influenced local governance, inspiring policies for mutual aid and resource sharing that buffered against future uncertainties. The narrative thus serves as a comprehensive guide to resilience, weaving personal triumph with universal truths about perseverance, innovation, and the enduring power of the human spirit to overcome. Through depth of commitment and clarity of purpose, her story endures as an invitation to all to examine their own foundations, to dig deeper where necessary, and to emerge with the nourishment needed to thrive through any winter that may come. The continued elaboration on her methods includes specifics on crop selection, favoring those with inherent longevity, such as garlic that self-preserves in its papery skins, or hardy squash that require minimal intervention beyond cool, dry conditions. She experimented with companion planting in the garden to enhance yields and reduce pests, ensuring the cellar received only the best quality inputs from the outset. This proactive approach minimized losses and maximized efficiency, demonstrating foresight that extended far beyond the immediate season. Her record-keeping in the ledger captured data on temperature variations using simple thermometers fashioned from household items, allowing her to refine techniques over time and provide evidence-based advice to others who inquired. The scientific underpinnings, though observed rather than formally studied, aligned with emerging understandings of microbiology and thermodynamics, where cooler, stable environments inhibit pathogenic growth while favoring beneficial processes. The social impact of her achievement cannot be overstated. As word spread beyond the valley, newspapers in distant towns carried accounts of the remarkable woman whose cellar defied convention, drawing visitors and correspondents eager to learn and adapt her ideas to their contexts. This dissemination amplified her influence, turning a local solution into a regional phenomenon that contributed to broader discussions on homesteading and gender roles in the developing frontier. The legacy lives on in the hearts and practices of those inspired by her example, reminding us that ordinary individuals possess extraordinary capacity when they dare to challenge limits and embrace the depths of possibility. The full scope of her explanation reveals how the cellar not only fed the body but nurtured the mind and spirit, providing a sanctuary of calm amid chaos where one could retreat to reflect and plan, fostering mental resilience that complemented physical sustenance. The family emerged from the winter stronger, more cohesive and equipped with skills that would serve them lifelong. The community as a whole benefited from this model of innovation through adversity, establishing traditions of knowledge sharing and cooperative resilience that defined their identity for generations to come. In closing, the tale of Eliza and a deep cellar stands as a timeless beacon illuminating the path to survival and prosperity for all who heed its call to dig deeper, persist with purpose, and share the fruits of one's labor with open hands and generous hearts, ensuring that no winter, however severe, can extinguish the flame of human ingenuity and compassion that burns eternal within us all.